Every year, Beloit College in Wisconsin publishes a list that they call the Mindset List, which reflects the worldview of entering college freshmen. It lists what they know, what they don't know, and I offer some examples gleaned from the past few years. Fergie is a pop singer, not a princess. Ferris Bueller could be your dad. Text has always been hyper. GM means food that's genetically modified, not General Motors. Having a chat seldom involves talking. Gaga has never been baby talk. The Lion King has always been on Broadway. PayPal has replaced Pen Pal as best friend online. A tablet is no longer something you take in the morning. Jurassic Park has always had rides and snack bars and not free-range velociraptors. They have never licked postage stamps. And SpongeBob SquarePants has always lived at Bikini Bottom. Now, I could go on, but I mention all of this because our younger generation of Jews, especially college students, are growing up without the perspective that comes from memory, especially about Israel. They have grown up in an era where they see Israeli soldiers unfairly portrayed in the media, firing into crowds of young Palestinians, throwing rocks and burning tires. I grew up hearing how Israeli soldiers climbed the rocky inclines of the Golan to repel the Syrian army's onslaught in the Yom Kippur War. For younger Jews, Yom Kippur is the day we fast and ask God for forgiveness. For me, Yom Kippur is the day forever etched into my memory when my people was almost destroyed. It was 44 years ago today that my rabbi in Ocean, New Jersey, announced from the Bima on Yom Kippur that Israel had been attacked. I remember that moment, tears streaming down his face, pleading from the Bima that every member of the shul should not, must not leave the synagogue without contributing money to Israel, even if that meant taking out a loan or a second mortgage on their home. The Jewish people were bleeding, and time was of the essence. And I remember that during the break, congregants were listening, yes, to their radios in their cars. You remember that. Talk about a different era. In order to glean what little was available on the airwaves. No one knew if Israel would survive. And in the days that followed, I remember the rallies and the fundraising drives. I remember asking my parents if I could take a portion of my bar mitzvah money to send to Israel. And I remember participating in a USY fundraising drive, going door to door, neighborhood to neighborhood, soliciting to collect money to save the Jewish people. Almost every conversation I have about Israel with young people, be it college students or those in their 20s and 30s and even people in their 40s, I always get the distinctive sense that they have little or no reference point about the history of the Jewish state or the present realities faced by Israel. It's mostly not their fault. They didn't grow up with those experiences or memories. And we have not sufficiently conveyed to them the story of Israel nor the complex realities it faces. I'm reminded of that story told about the religious school principal who visits a classroom in the religious school The principal walks in, and the teacher is in the middle of teaching the class, and the teacher asks her class, "Who knocked down the walls of Jericho?" And no one is answering. And she asks again, "Who can tell me? Who knocked down the walls of Jericho?" And again, no one answers. Finally, in exasperation, the principal looking on, the teacher calls on this kid in the back, "Danny, Danny, who knocked down the walls of Jericho?" And Danny says, "I didn't do it." Principal says to the teacher, "You gonna accept that answer?" And the teacher responds, "If Danny says he didn't do it, I believe him." Well, at this point, the principal is really upset, goes to the rabbi and says to the rabbi, "Are you gonna tolerate such a thing in your religious school?" And the rabbi says, "Listen, I stand by my teachers. If the teacher said Danny didn't do it, then the kid didn't do it." At this point, the principal doesn't know what to do, calls the president of the shul. "Do you know what's going on in your shul? The kids don't know who knocked down the walls of Jericho." To which the president responds, "I don't know who knocked down the wall. Just get it fixed and send me the bill." Now, we laugh at the story, but it exposes a truth, which is our young people need to learn more. They need to know more, and so do we. Because if we don't, who will? One of the sacred messages of Yom Kippur is that Jews are supposed to be witnesses. The book of Isaiah declares, "Atem edai," you are my witnesses. We conclude Yom Kippur at the end of the Ne'ilah service with the Shema Yisrael. The last letter of the word Shema is Ayin, and the last letter of the word Echad is Daled. And if you look at any Siddur, you look in your Machzor, both of those letters are emboldened and printed larger. Ayin and Daled spell the word aid, which means to be a witness. To declare God's oneness is to be a witness for truth and justice and goodness in this world. Atem edai, we are to be witnesses. Who will tell the story of the Jewish people and its rebirth in its homeland if we don't? Who will tell young Jews that not so long ago the Jewish people had no homeland? We were the wanderers of history. For 2,000 years, we were politically and militarily dead, a ghost people. Who will tell them that we were the people in the world who were forgotten and rejected with nowhere to go and nowhere to call home? Who will tell them the story of how the nascent Jewish state offered peace and concessions time and again, and the offers were rebuffed by the Arab world and the Palestinians? Who will tell them that from 1948 to 1967, there were no territories? The old city and the Kotel were not in Jewish hands. In fact, the Western Wall during that period, during those years, was used as a garbage dump, and toilets were set up against it. No Jews were permitted to be there. Who will tell the truth about the hatred propagated by the Palestinian leadership towards Jews and the lies that their children are taught as I'm giving this very sermon in their textbooks and in their schoolrooms about Jews and about Israel? How streets are named after terrorists who have maimed and killed innocents. Who will be a witness to history? Who, if not us? Atem edai. You are my witnesses. There are 22 Arab states, and there's just one Jewish state. I discovered the following statistic. It's quite remarkable. The population of Israel is just 1/10 of 1% of the world's population, and yet Israel, and only Israel, is singled out at the United Nations for criticism. It's the only country which is placed on the permanent agenda of the Human Rights Commission. To quote Hillel Nord, UN Watch Executive Director, in the dystopian universe of George Orwell's 1984, everyone was forced to undergo a daily 2-minute of hate. In the dystopian universe of the UN Human Relations Council, where Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Cuba, and Venezuela are members, the built-in schedule of every session, that means, my friends, 3 times every year, it includes 1 whole day dedicated solely to spewing hate against the Jewish state. Atem Adai, we must be witness to the unfair and the anti-Semitic treatment of Israel. And I'm sure you are aware of the environment that exists on virtually every college campus. Israel is considered toxic. Anti-Israel propaganda abounds in and outside of the classrooms of our universities. And those of our kids who are in college and universities who support Israel are often ostracized or vilified or kept out of organizations or kicked out of organizations. And the pressure that they are subjected to when they support Israel is beyond the pale. No wonder, in one recent study which asked American Jews if the destruction of Israel would be a personal tragedy for them, personal tragedy, 80% of American Jews 65 and older said that Israel's destruction would indeed be a personal tragedy. But amazingly, 50% of those 35 years old and younger said that Israel's destruction would not be a personal tragedy. And I would venture to say that younger people feel this way in part because when they think of Israel, they do not comprehend the miracle that is Israel. Rather, they see images of uprisings and stabbings and checkpoints and conflicts over settlements and a focus on our enemies and war. And I know sometimes they get frustrated, as do we, when Israel makes mistakes, and Israel does make mistakes, as any country does, sometimes big mistakes. But I'm reminded of the story told of the artist who came to paint the portrait of Oliver Cromwell. And the artist said to Lord Cromwell, "You know, I've always been very exact. I noticed that your face has a number of warts upon it, and therefore I must show the warts on your face." Whereupon Cromwell answered, "I don't mind if you paint me with warts, but don't forget my face." There are those who would only paint the warts of Israel. They forget the face. Amos Oz, the famed Israeli novelist, wrote, "Israel is a dream come true, and as such, it is bound to be flawed. Otherwise, it would still be a dream." No country can be perfect. Nobody said that a country in a part of the world where those who surround you want you dead, want you to cease to exist, was going to be easy. But you do not have to be a perfect land in order to be a worthy land. In this new year, we will celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel. Think about that. 70 years. It's an eye blink. But it is simply mind-boggling to contemplate what the Jewish people has achieved in these past 70 years. I mean, by all logic, the end of the Shoah, no one in their right mind would have thought that the best days of the Jewish people were ahead of us. Remember that Hitler destroyed 1/3 of the world's Jews. But what is even more astounding is that Hitler destroyed 90% of Eastern European Jewry. 90% was obliterated in the Holocaust. Jewish communities that had flourished in Europe for hundreds and hundreds of years were totally wiped out. At the end of the Shoah, the most historic, the most established, the most culturally rich Jewish communities that had ever existed in all of Jewish history outside the land of Israel were gone. The state of Israel is the single most significant achievement of the Jewish people in the last 2,000 years. No other people in human history has resurrected itself in its land, brought back its culture and its language back to life. My friend Danny Gordas points out that in 1900, every person in the world that spoke Hebrew could probably fit right into this room, into this sanctuary. Do you know how many people speak Hebrew today in 2017? Over 8 million people, and many more around the world. There are thousands and thousands of books and plays and literary works and dissertations, every conceivable form of literature and writing which expresses the culture and values of a civilization that have been produced. Do we appreciate what it took to create all that? Even more amazing is that Hebrew became the national language of the Jewish state in the first place. Most of the immigrants to Israel didn't speak Hebrew. They spoke Arabic, they spoke Yiddish, they spoke German, but Hebrew, they didn't know Hebrew. Sure, they said the prayers, they were studied in text, but no one spoke it as a modern language. But Hebrew was the language of the Bible. It told the story of our people the last time we were sovereign in the land. And remember who built the Jewish state. David Ben-Gurion, Shimon Peres, all those founders, they didn't come from democracies. They didn't know from democracy. They came from tyrannies and dictatorships. And they still created one of the most vibrant democracies in the world, indeed the only democracy in the Middle East. One with the most open and free press, one that protects human rights for Jews and for Arabs, for women, for LGBT community. Did you know that in Tel Aviv, they have one of the largest gay pride parades in the entire world, some 200,000 people. It's a place where even gay Arabs, including those, by the way, who live in the West Bank, come to express themselves, because back in the West Bank, they're killed for being gay. And for those who claim that Israel is an apartheid state, we need to remind people that there is an Arab Supreme Court justice, Arab ministers in every government since the state's founding, Arab members of the Knesset, Bedouin women studying to become doctors at Ben-Gurion University, and Arab men and women getting PhDs at the Hebrew University. Atem Edai, we need to share our narrative with the world. In Israel's 70 years, she has produced more scientists, poets, writers, musicians per capita than almost anywhere else in the world. She generates more startups than any other country in the world except the United States. And if you have a cell phone, if you use text messaging, if you've ever had an MRI, they're all from Israel. And I could go on for hours speaking about the achievements. Did you know that in Beersheba, Israel is building a cyber security center that will be unrivaled anywhere in the world, making it a cyber power on the world stage. And Israel has done something that no other country has done. It has made itself weather independent for its water, creating technology and conservation techniques that are seismic in the implications for the world water shortages. And I'm sure you know that old joke, if only Moses had turned right instead of left, the Jews would have gotten all the oil. Guess what? Turns out that he didn't make the wrong turn after all. Israel has now more proven natural gas reserves than the Saudis have oil. And Israel has become the bio, nano, medical technology leader in the world. And she has accomplished all of this while having to spend untold resources and treasure and blood defending herself. But her greatest asset, her greatest resource is the resiliency and the faith of her people. And her greatest achievement is the kindness and the compassion of her people. Even with all the challenges, Israel is often the first to respond to earthquakes and hurricanes and natural disasters around the world. We saw Israelis on the ground in Texas and in Mexico. She has shared her technology of irrigation and farming with African countries to create a better life for millions. What Israel has achieved as a society, as a people, as a country in a mere 70 years is beyond anything ever seen in history. And our children and our young people need to know this story. They need to know Israel with all its complexities and all of its contradictions, but also the miracle that is Israel. Atem Edai. We must be witnesses. And the only way to truly understand and appreciate Israel is to experience it. If you have not visited Israel, or you do not have it in your plans to visit Israel, and I know this congregation is one of the leading congregations in the country to take trips to Israel, but if you have not been there, or if you have not been there in a very long time because things change so rapidly, then you would do well to remember a story from the state's founding. In 1947, the first unacceptable partition plan, there were two. The first unacceptable partition plan was given to David Ben-Gurion, but before Ben-Gurion made a decision to reject that first plan, before finally accepting the final partition plan, he sought out the advice of Yosef Debenkin, a friend and a labor Zionist leader. And Debenkin said to him, before I can answer you, I have to ask two people, and then I'll get back to you. And so in a little while, Debenkin came back and said to Ben-Gurion, I've consulted my two experts, and I've concluded you must reject the plan. And Ben-Gurion concurred. And then Ben-Gurion asked, whom did you consult with? And Debenkin responded, I consulted with my grandfather and my grandchild. My grandfather, he said, has been dead for 10 years. And my grandchild is not yet born. So I asked them, if our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents knew there was a sovereign Jewish state, a state controlled by Jews with a Jewish army, one of the most powerful armies in the world, where Jewish civilization and Jewish life lives and thrives, and we didn't tell the story of that miracle, and we didn't visit the first Jewish state in 2,000 years, they would be appalled. They would weep. Because if we don't cherish the miracle of Israel, support her and defend her, then shame on us. Because we will have forsaken our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren who have yet to be born, who don't know Israel, who God willing one day will grow up to know in Israel. An hour or so before the opening session of the First Zionist Congress in Basel, Herzl asked his aide, David Wolfson, to create a banner for the hall's entrance. Wolfson didn't know Basel. He had no idea where to find such a thing, so he's running through the streets and the boulevards, and he's scouring the shops in order to find a suitable emblem. But he found nothing appropriate. Exhausted and frustrated, he entered a small synagogue to rest for a moment. And there he saw his emblem. He took a large blue and white tallis, removed the fringes, and with a fountain pen inscribed a Magen David in the center. And thus was Israel's flag born. A country whose flag is a tallis, whose anthem is a prayer of hope, is worthy of our support and of our children's love. Israel is ours, ours to love, ours to nurture, ours to defend. Let us never forget the modern miracle of the land of Israel. Let us never forget what our people has achieved. Atem edai, you must be witnesses. And so I conclude with the words of the Israeli poet Ehud Manor, Ein li eretz acheret, Ein li eretz acheret. I have no other country, even if my land is aflame, with a painful body and a hungry heart. Here is my home. Ein li eretz acheret. I have no other country. Lo eshtok. I will not stay silent. Atem edai. We must be God's witnesses in this world. We dare not be less. Amen. Please rise for Hatikva.
Kol od balevav benima nefesh Yehudi homiya ulfatei mizrach Kadima Ayin Letzion Tzofia Od lo avda tikvateinu Hatikva בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים.
Please be seated. The Chazan continues, page 620, Chamal Masecha.
חמול על מעשיך ותשמח במעשיך ויאמרו לך חוסך בצדקך עמוסיך תוקדש אדון על כל מעשיך כי מקדישך בקדושתך קידשת נאה לקדוש פר מקדושים פר מקדושים.
turn now to page 622 as we rise for Kol Ma'aminim as the ark is open.
וכל 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 מאמינים מאמינים וכל 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 מאמינים שהוא וכל מאמינים שהוא אל אמונה אהלן בסתר בצל שעדיין לילה חול וחול וחול וכל 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 מאמינים שהוא וכל 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 מאמינים שהוא וכל מאמינים שהוא לבדו הממליך מלכים ולא המלוכה וכל מאמינים שהוא מיתממים תמימים וכל מאמינים שהוא תמים פועלו תושגב לבדך ותגאול הכל ותיכול לקדם על ידיך והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד לילה 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 דה 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 דה
624.
ובכן תן פחדך אדוני אלוהינו כל מעשיך ואימתך על גולמה שבראת ויראו כל המעשים ושתבוא לבא לך כל הברואים ויעשו כולם עבודה אחד לעשות את זה בלבב שלם כמו שלנו שנתלו לפניך עוז בידך וגבורה בימינך ושמך נורא על כל מה שבראת וכן תגבור לעמך אדוני לעמך תהילה לירך ותקווה טובה לדורשך ותכל פלע מייחלים לך שמחה לארצך וששון לעירך במהרה בימינו וכן צדיקים ושמחו ישרים יעלוז ועזין בינה יגילו וגאולת יקפוץ פיה וכל ענישה כולה כעשן תכלה כי תעביר ממשלת זדון מן הארץ.
Cantor continues, page 628, V'timloch.
ותמלוך